Will you please welcome to Interchange a man who really needs no introduction, Mr. Andy Burnham, Mayor of Greater Manchester.
Thank you. I feel like I'm breaking up a party. I've never seen a transport gathering party before, but it's good. I like it, because don't forget, everybody, you're in the home of 24-hour party people. This is the city of that name. We did have an audacious attempt to steal our crown as Party Central a couple of years ago. You may remember 10 Downing Street made a bid for that particular accolade. But I can tell you now, we're winning it back. And so you can play your part in that tonight. You've got the mayor's full permission to party. You know, what they say is tables are for dancing on in Manchester. But yeah, you can. But don't expect the mayor to come and bail you out of police custody later on this evening, because I know you're here tomorrow, aren't you? Bright and early. Is that right, Andrew? Yeah. So don't forget, you've got another day. So don't go too mad. Well, it's great to be able to say a few things. You've heard from the main man, though. Mr. Vernon Everett, I hear, has already spoken to you today. So I'm just the sort of the person who comes down at the end of the day and tells a few jokes. But no, I'm making a serious point, actually. We're so grateful to have Vernon working with us, with his long experience in the industry. I know he'll be known to many of you. It symbolises the need to bring London-style transport to all parts of England, and obviously Vernon is helping us do that. But I think this revolution is only going to build. And what may have maybe felt like a few difficult years for you, I think public transport in England finally has a sort of clearer outlook, I would say. And while it may not always have seemed that way to you, there's more cross-party consensus about it than you might think. I thought what I would do is just share a couple of insights from being the first mayor to put buses back under public control. I'm sure Burnham touched on a couple of those themes, but I just thought I'd share a couple of things from my point of view. A couple of lessons from HS2. We do need to talk about it, and I would, again, share a couple of things from my perspective, and then perhaps just finish off with a little bit on funding, and then I'm more than happy to open up to your questions. Just on the whole process of building the B network, and I'm sure Vernon took you through the vision, a London-style system here by 2030, a simple, convenient tap-in, tap-out system covering bike, bus, tram, and train, because that's where we're going next. TFGM overground or B network overground. We've identified the lines that we want to bring into the system, and that's Vernon's sort of big mission now as we complete bus franchising by January next year. It will all be about bringing rail into the B network, and that's exciting. In terms of the insights, the one thing I would say, for those of you who are in a situation where maybe there's still a debate going in your area about whether to go down the path that we've gone down or not, I would say our experience is absolutely go down that path. The theme of this conference, Andrew, is integration, as I understand it, or one of the themes. I don't see how you can properly integrate without having, control over the fare box for all modes. You have to have that, I think, if you're going to truly integrate and create that capped system like London has. We want a low-cost public transport system here, high usage, low fare system. That's what we are working towards, as London has had. And that says to me that you have to then have control of that fare box so that you can offer much for people who are prepared to change their behaviour. You offer them a chance to make significant savings on the cost of their travel, lower the cost of living for people. You might remember, had a bit of a debate about a clean air zone for Greater Manchester. We're really clear now that the B network is our route to clean air. Give our residents the incentive to use public transport. That's a better way to do it. We will have an all-electric bus fleet here in Greater Manchester before the end of this decade. Our trams already run on renewable energy. We will have the first zero-carbon public transport system at street level. And I would say that, and hopefully a very well-used public transport system, that's, I think, the best way to clean up the air and improve people's health and improve people's lives. So to me, that is a big compelling reason. And I can just start to do things that I just couldn't do before. For instance, we've put forward a pilot on night buses. You would think night buses in this day and age should be standard everywhere, but they're not outside of London. So we are going to be looking at bringing back a pilot on night buses. We're looking at potentially a hopper fare for Greater Manchester. These are the things you can do when you've got control of that fare box. And obviously, when the kind of proceeds are coming back, you build that higher patronage through these incentives that you put out there. And obviously, then you create a sort of a virtuous circle where the success keeps fueling greater success and greater usage. Again, it's happened in London. A couple of other quick insights. I would certainly say we get much better value for public money in the system that we've gone into. As mayor, it always frustrated me in the deregulated model where there was a threat to a particular route and we would be left in a really difficult position. Do we fund it or do we not? Often the public bodies can feel over a barrel in that situation. I can say to you that the cost per kilometre of regulated services in Greater Manchester, having done 2/3 of the contracts, the cost per kilometre is coming out, Burnham, 34% less than the tendered services that we were doing, in the old deregulated model, and that's because obviously all the bargaining power is on the other side and not with the public side. One other thing, I just heard a comment from one of our operators recently who said that being in the regulated world has made them think much more about the detail of their operations from top to bottom. I thought that was quite a revealing insight. And actually, it's not all about us sort of pointing the finger at the transport industry, by the way. We've had to look at ourselves in the mirror, and we've had to ask ourselves the question, have we managed our highways network here as well as we might have done across our 10 councils? And the answer to that is no. And now we're in charge, if you like, and the public are going to hold us to account. We recognise now that we've got to ask some difficult questions of ourselves and coordinate much better the roadworks across Greater Manchester and how we manage the highways. So these are the first reflections. There is not a doubt in my mind that we've done the right thing. We are ready to help everywhere else go on this journey, and I think the Liverpool City region will be next because the mayor has already taken that decision. I think West Yorkshire won't be far after. I think South Yorkshire will go soon. I'm no doubt that the new North East mayor being elected in May will go quickly in the same direction. This could be a golden age for public transport in the north of England if we all really work together and collaborate, both from a political side of things, but with industry as well. We are already talking about having an arrangement with the bus manufacturers in Britain where we all plan what we are going to need and we book the slots in advance. So we make sure they've got an order book that kind of is built for the rest of the decade. And that's got to be a good story, isn't it? Buses built in Britain running on the streets of the north of England. And that's an opportunity that's coming. We're ready to share, and we are sharing our expertise with everybody. So, I would say get with this revolution, everybody. It's happening. It's positive. It's going to improve public transport and reduce the cost of public transport to the travelling public. I think it's time to get behind it. And I would say to the rail industry, please get behind it as well. The danger is, if you look around our city with the tram system that we've got, the yellow buses that are arriving, the danger is if rail doesn't move more quickly in terms of reform, the rail stations look like outliers in a modern city. They look like they're separate from the modern integrated system, and that's not a good place for the rail industry to be. And I say that, in all sort of, in a spirit of being constructive. Please get with this and work with us to the same timetable. Otherwise, people's trust in the trains is pretty low at the moment, and it will get even lower if people can't see how rail is also part of this future vision for public transport. A comment or two on learnings from HS2. Obviously, it was a really painful experience for us, it having been promised repeatedly to us and then scrapped fairly abruptly. Won't go into the politics of all of that. You'll be pleased to hear. But what I will do is just make a sort of policy observation on that. My experience, 7 years as Mayor of Greater Manchester, was a deep frustration of the inability of transport planners and policymakers to take a place-based approach to transport infrastructure. Transport is nothing without the place around it. The point of good transport links is to enable great things to happen in the places that it serves. But sometimes you wouldn't think that people understand that when you talk to them, because we had a disagreement about Manchester Piccadilly all the way through the debate about HS2. While we supported it in principle, we said build it as an underground station. You go to any other city like this one in Europe and you will find an underground system. And when you build underground, of course, you preserve land for economic development. If you want a King's Cross of the North, the only place I think you can have it would be here at Manchester Piccadilly. So why build it on the cheap? And why only see the transport infrastructure, but not the place around it, and not think about what transport enables? So a place-based approach to transport planning is absolutely critical. And I would say the HS2 debate was far too narrow and far too stuck. There was sort of too much of a blinkered way of looking at things. I think, to be fair to the government, they have given us the ability now, Steve Rotherham and I, to look at helping plan the new Liverpool-Manchester railway as part of Northern Powerhouse Rail. That is a positive thing. And we've already gone back to the government with our preferred route that will go via Warrington, the airport. And we've said to them, we still want that underground station at Piccadilly. But let's use land value capture to fund the right infrastructure. I understand the government has used that on the Northern Line at Nine Elms. We've already used that approach. And I think we should use it much more to build the right infrastructure so that then we unlock the most economic regeneration and development possible, and then capture some of the value of that to pay for the infrastructure over a period of time. So another observation. The final one would just be, hopefully you can see the excitement around public transport in this city. I can see the Odd B Network badge out there, and these are the must-have items, by the way. Don't leave Manchester without one. I think it's exciting, but we can't do the traditional British thing of not funding it properly, because otherwise it will kind of run out of steam. And we need to think of a new funding model for public transport outside of London. The government has innovated with the City Region Sustainable Transport Settlement. That's a capital settlement that's given us a sort of 10-year horizon on capital. Brilliant, well done. But I think we need the same for revenue, so that we know what we've got and we know what system we need to run. And if it's not all to be centrally provided, well, you can't then in that situation deny us the chance to raise more money for ourselves. And I'm not talking about going out there and sort of raising unnecessary taxes or anything like that. But it would be simple measures like perhaps a tourist tax of some kind. If we need to raise more revenue from ourselves, give us the simple means to do it. Do not leave us sort of trapped in what Whitehall decides and as to whether or not people here can have a public transport system that is as good as London. And this is the main final point. The whole painful experience of HS2 and everything over the last decade, it still brings out the feeling for too many people here that we're second-class citizens when it comes to transport. That we can't have both east-west good links and north-south. We have to choose. You can have one but not both. Well, why? Why do people in the north always have to choose? Why don't we get north-south and east-west? It is absolutely ridiculous that Manchester-Birmingham will be left coping on the West Coast Main Line without any major improvement once HS2 starts running. The notion of us having even worse train services after the opening of HS2 is a complete insult to the people of this city region and the north more generally. The north shouldn't be forced to choose. We do need an ambitious vision for public transport, both within our cities and between our cities, because that then is an ambitious vision for the northern economy in the 21st century. The thing I would say finally is you can see the ambitions we have got for our city. When are we going to get UK government to have the same ambitions for these cities, the same ambitions for the north of England as to what it can be in the 21st century? I want to see that day come when we have a government with high ambitions for the north of England. Perhaps the painful times we've lived through are beginning to kind of change things, change the debate about all of these things. Thank you for bearing with the rant, and thank you for the clap over there. I'll probably pause there because I can see all the beers going warm in your hands, and I know you probably want to get stuck into them. But we'll happily take a question or two, Andrew, if people would like me to do that.
let's just first have a big hand for Andy. That was fantastic. Very strong. Thank you. Thank you, Andy. So I think what Andy, Vernon and his team are doing totally embodies the spirit of Interchange and why we're here today and why Manchester is the perfect location for the second Interchange event. So thank you, Andy. Right, so we've got some mics. Andy, would you mind just coming here? And I'm going to repeat you that one. And you could take the questions from there.
Okay.
I'm going to hand this around. So do we have any questions, sir? By the way, before any questions, no speeches, please. Just quick, sharp questions. Thank you.
Hello, Andy. I'm just wondering, regarding the Bean network, what are you doing in regards to improving accessibility, especially for those with like non-visible conditions? And are you looking at having live data for bus and Metrolink?
Live
Data, so
Yes.
passengers.
Sure. So accessibility is really at the heart of the B Network vision. So what I said when I first launched it was we need to have Metrolink standards across all of the system, and all of our Metrolink tram stops are completely fully accessible. The trams are as well. The new buses that we're bringing through have 2 wheelchair spaces, audio-visual on every bus. And obviously we want to improve real-time information at our bus stops and interchange as well. Bus tracking, for those of you who live in Greater Manchester, I don't know if we've got a few of you here, it is being added to the B Network app next month. We're going live with tranche 2 of franchising in Rochdale, Oldham, the rest of Bury and North Manchester on the 24th of March. And bus tracking will be added to the app by then, as well as journey planning. So the thing I would just say is, it's a sort of evolution, really. We're not fixing everything, constant continual improvements to the B Network on all the issues that you mentioned. But yeah, thanks for wearing the badge, and hopefully you back the B Network vision.
So what can we do to get rail to get the finger out and get on with it? Here's the man from Network Rail who wants him to fucking move.
I was hoping you might answer that question for me, but yeah. I don't know. I mean, it's in some ways, it's our fault, isn't it? It's the politicians' fault, I guess, in terms of, not making quick enough decisions, not being clear enough about the future of the railways and what we want from the railways. But I think it has to get better at embracing change. I kind of notice the answer is often no, or it's an objection. Just take rail stations. So just on that question of accessibility, only 43% of our rail stations in Greater Manchester are fully accessible and have, step-free access. So 57 don't. And we've said, devolve them to us. They're almost the fabric of local communities. Let us build around them, build on top of them, and then get the proceeds back into improving them. And look how quickly this city moves. This city does not hang around when it's going after regeneration. And the rail industry needs to, I was told at Transport for the North last week that if we carry on at the same pace in terms of station accessibility, I think it's going to be another 70 years, or something, until all stations will be made accessible. I mean, is the rail industry really saying to disabled people that in your lifetime, we are not going to let you use your local rail station? It's just not on. It's not on. So I would honestly say, just get with it a bit more, put place-based structures into the railway system now, start having co-terminus units with the combined authorities and, collaborate with us whether it affects more than one city. Just get with it, really, and just get going on it. And it is a frustration that I've experienced. I'll be honest. I don't want to be always beating up the rail industry. I would like to be praising the rail industry. And as I was saying, we've been through this with buses. We're now in a position now where we're talking about a golden era for buses in the north of England. That's great, isn't it? What a great place to be on the back of the arguments we had about franchising. Well, we need the same with rail now. We need to move beyond these fractious times with the rail industry and start talking about a kind of new vision for rail, in the north of England. It's 200 years coming up since this region brought through the first railway line in the world. The Rainhill trials were, 1820, there's definitely an expert in this crowd who's going to correct me in a minute, aren't they? 1827 or something? I don't know, something like that. That's it. I knew there would be. I knew there would be. Thank you, sir. I stand corrected.
Yeah, it was past 1826.
I wasn't too bad there. I kind of had to, yeah. But I absolutely applaud your knowledge. But shouldn't this part of the world now be saying, right, the place that gave railways to the world is going to get the most modern, greenest railway in the world, and and it's bringing through lots of innovative new thinking around rail. So if you're an ally in that campaign, and if there are more is there any more allies in that campaign out there? Oh dear, I've got work to do here, haven't I? Come on, we need to get with it and get this sorted out.
Andy, David Redwell, I'm from the West Mean Combined Authority, where Dan Norris is the mayor, and obviously we send regards, and the pasture rep. Access for all is a disgrace. It's a national disgrace. And I wonder what the mayors can do collectively, Labour mayors in particular, to take the power away from Department of Transport to treat us like some sort of beauty contest, whether we get an accessible station in Greater Manchester or an accessible station in West Yorkshire or an accessible station in Newcastle upon Tyne. Because it's just simply not accessible. And getting the Great Britain's rail transition team to understand that devolution needs to happen and that we need fully accessible stations, I wonder what pressure you could put on Louise Hay to really ramp this, because we've been arguing this all day. I've just come off a call with First Great Western, and we're struggling to even get a basic station access. And some of our major intercity stations in the southwest, Westmead, Cheltenham, don't have wheelchair access. We're on ramps and of no access at all. So you were right. And I don't think Network Rail can treat people like this in city regions where the economy needs to work for the city. We'll have rights, and where we should be able to travel around transport for the north and around Greater Manchester and around Greater Bristol and the southwest of England. Thank you.
Well, I couldn't, I think it does deserve a round of applause, because I couldn't agree with you more. And I've made a change on this as the chair of the Rail North Committee. So that's the role I took up last year. And what I said was, I am not prepared to have accessibility as the last item on the agenda, or even not on the agenda. It's a first order issue. It's the first item on the agenda. And at our Rail North Committee meeting last week, it was the first item on the agenda. And I've said I want it as first item on the agenda every meeting, because we need now relentlessly to start saying, what's the plan? We're going to sign off, I think, an ambition as Transport for the North to have every station accessible within a decade. There has to be, again, some urgency about this, and it is about change. Funding accessibility centrally from the Department for Transport, where everyone has to say, please, can we have it? I mean, it is insulting, it's completely wrong, and it needs wholesale change. But the change comes, in my view, from rethinking about the role of stations. It's not good enough for the rail industry to say, oh, we might need that bit of land near the station in 50 years for a turning circle. That's kind of sometimes how they kind of come back to you. You've got to get into the business now of unlocking the potential for growth from the rail stations, unlocking the potential for residential development around them. Build homes around train stations. You're building homes for public transport. Young people who will want to kind of buy a home connected to the public transport system, and then the proceeds of that regeneration pays for the accessibility. I will say this to Dan. I mean, Dan and I are working closely on these things. All combined authorities with elected mayors, in my view, should all set the same goal: all stations accessible within a decade. Even that, you could say, is too long, but that is what we need. We cannot go into the 2040s in this country where some people can't use their local rail station. That's frankly shameful if we allow that to happen.
Thank you. Just this gentleman in the middle.
Hi, Andy. So obviously it's not just Greater Manchester that has had all this devolution and the combined authorities. However, despite this, Greater Manchester, compared to these other devolved authorities, had greater economic growth, greater transport improvements, job density, population. So what is it specifically about Manchester that makes it so exceptional?
It's Mayor, clearly. The real answer is the people. And I speak as I have to whisper this in certain circles. And I can see Mr. Norris here as well, and he knows my football affiliations, and he knows my background. I have to whisper the fact that the Mayor of Greater Manchester was in fact born in Liverpool, and Slightly, yeah, it's true. I can't deny it. And the truth of the matter is, there has been a different political culture in different places, and this place has always had practical, positive, collaborative culture, and it goes a long way back to when they first owned the airport and used the airport as the sort of glue that built the new Greater Manchester. It is about culture, but to his great credit, my close friend Steve Rotherham is changing Liverpool, and I think the Liverpool City region is coming up fast now. The political culture there is changing, and it's largely because of Steve Rotherham. So that's, I think, the answer to your question. It's about collaboration. It's about getting rid of parochialism. I hear people having debates about devolution. Oh, X can't agree with Y, and they don't want a mayor, and they're getting left behind. And I also think the danger for Scotland is its cities are going to be left behind. If you're hoovering all the power up to the national level, you're not empowering your cities to really drive forward going forward. So the Greater Manchester model works. It's based on the identity, as we were wearing the badge, and you are, thank you, of the city region. So people relate to this identity. So it's not like a layer of, anonymous layer at the northwest level. This works. And George Osborne, to be fair, deserves credit for it because he really brought it through. I think every area needs to kind of get with it now and get on its own path towards what we're doing. When the day comes that Greater Manchester can collaborate with the West of England Combined Authority down in the southwest on funding a transport scheme without any reference to Whitehall, is the day when this country will have a more mature, developed political system. Because the big thing about this role that I occupy now compared to what I used to do in Westminster is that you take a place-based approach to things rather than a party, place first rather than party first. And honestly, it opens up so much better conversations when you work like that. Andy Street and I collaborate a lot, as you can probably see. And thank you, by the way, to any members of the private sector consortium that are helping us look at alternatives to HS2 between Manchester and Birmingham. We do truly appreciate it, by the way, and we're really grateful. But I think that's an example of how business finds it easier to work with combined authorities that take a place-first approach, non-partisan, long-term. We take a long-term approach. That, I think, is part of Greater Manchester's success. Don't chop and change things all of the time. With new minister comes in, it's all different. We have a course that we don't deviate from here. We're on it. We're not moving. 2038 net zero city region. And that, I think, helps everybody get a climate that they can work with. So those are some of the ingredients of the success. And yeah, maybe the mayor has helped a little bit. I don't know.
And have we got time for one more at 6 o'clock?
Yes.
Sir.
Hi, Andy. I'd just like to ask, the SNP have said that they want to break up Network Rail and have their assets devolved to the Scottish Parliament. Do you think that it's time that Network Rail is broken up in England and its assets are devolved in Greater Manchester? If you look at the work that Rochdale's doing to build around its stations and really try and boost patronage and get that land used, for the people holding it back at Network Rail, how do you feel about breaking up those national institutions to make sure that we can get our ambitions over the line?
Oh, God, I knew you'd ask a tough question. So I think it's important that the rail system is a UK asset and it's understood as such, and it's managed at that level, basically, and you don't sort of break it up and balkanise it too much. But I will come back to the point I made a moment ago. Network Rail needs to reflect the new political geography of England and hopefully in time Scotland, because I'd like to see Scottish cities get city region status, and we could collaborate more with them at that point. So that's what I would say. Vernon will need, and we are having productive conversations with them, aren't we, Vernon? A Greater Manchester delivery unit that we would have, a partnership about. Really, we would work with them to manage those B network services and the infrastructure related to them. That's the way I would probably suggest we go, to be honest, rather than sort of breaking up the rail industry. Because I talked at the start about the dangers of fragmentation in transport. I think if you go from the 80s, 90s and the period we've lived through, we've had fragmented transport in the UK. and it, believe it or not, it doesn't work. It only works if you simplify transport, if you integrate transport. And so I don't think we should kind of repeat some of the mistakes of the past in a different way. I do think we need a national body to run the railways in Britain and the infrastructure, but it needs to be done in much more partnership with places, and let places tell Network Rail what the benefit to the place is of doing things in a certain way compared to a different way. And that's probably the best answer I can give to a good question that probably deserves more thought than me just throwing out that quick answer.
Andy, thank you so much. Sadly, we're out of time, unless you want to extend your stay.
I can see a lot of people wanting to get to that bar, so I am not going to stand in the way of that. So have a great conference here, everybody. Thanks for bringing this conference to our great city, Andrew. We really appreciate the fact that it's taking place here. It's an amazing gathering, so have a great time while you're here. Don't go at it too hard tonight. Be up bright and early tomorrow, but thanks very much for listening, and enjoy the rest of the conference.
Give it up for Andy Burnham. Thank you, everybody.
Well, Liz.